spend the morning reading scholars' accounts of people early to these shores. Ojibwe, who long ago migrated to Chequamegon Bay. The trappers, traders, voyageurs who paddled the unsettled lake. 19th century masons who quarried brownstone in 8x4 blocks and shipped it off to Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit, as far east as Buffalo.
The Apostle Islands have stories to tell. On the edges where water meets land, field meets forest, past meets future, stories are revealed. A deserted homestead in an overgrown wood, the sharp, steep wall of a quarry, a fish tug in dry dock, a lighthouse on a border of land, the crash of waves against the shore.
My favorite time of day is sunset.
Some people need to just get out here and take a break from the rest of their life.
Today we went swimming. Can't do that all the time.
And the storm was over the big lake, but seemed reluctant to come into the islands.
You can see, you can hear, you can smell, you can watch. It's all about nature.
And we found a snake and a turtle, and we learned how a tombolo was formed.
The lake, from my Indian perspective, is sacred.
People who have experienced the islands become the keepers of stories. Stories of subsistence, sailors, adventure, stories of diverse cultures that met like ice floes on the lake, sometimes grinding, overriding, sometimes freezing together into a smooth, unbroken union. The voices of all mingle to tell the stories of the apostles, stories still being written.
There are 22 Apostle Islands if you include Long Island, which technically is not an island now, but a peninsula.
Each island has its unique character. The first time that we discovered the backwater here at Julian Bay, all of a sudden realized that there was a whole other world back there that was totally different than the beach.
Devil's Island is a chunk of sandstone, so there's very little actual soil. And many of the trees that you see out there look small, but they're actually quite old. The climate out there is pretty rugged. The winters and the fall storms are pretty wild out there. There are quite a few rare plant species associated with Devil's Island. Orchids, sphagnum mosses of all types.
It's incredibly beautiful in an old forest. If you really want to understand it, you have to see the small stuff along with the big stuff.
The most significant old growth we have in the lake shore is on Outer Island. There's just about 200 acres of old growth, white pine and hemlock. The federal government set aside reserves for the lighthouse stations, and those reserves were off limits to loggers.
Being in ancient forests is like being out in open seascape where the endless sea creates possibilities for our inner spirit. Ancient forests have a way of doing that where you're in the midst of a landscape that, because of its age and its magnitude, is powerful enough to do the same thing, but in a really different environment. It's like being in a comforter on a cold day.
It's like being in a cathedral. When you get into these stands of big trees,
The people that do come out here and take advantage of the Apostle Islands do it because they're really looking for an adventure. They're looking for something that's going to be a little bit out of the ordinary, a little bit different.
The very first time I went to Raspberry Island, I remember that so clearly because as soon as I reached the top of the stairs, I felt like I just walked through a window in time.
May 16, 1888. Arrived at the station and commenced lighting up. May 22nd. Thoroughly cleansed and overhauled apparatus, which is now working well. June 17th. Wild strawberries will be plentiful this summer, a few just beginning to ripen. August 11th. Tug Daisy brought an excursion party who visited the station and expressed their delight over the rural attractions of the place. They were the first visitors of the season. September 18th. Steam barge Samuel Hodge came near running aground Saturday night during a heavy fog. The captain could not see the light, but fortunately heard the foghorn. Stormy weather from the 16th to the 18th. September 22nd. Birds of passage arrived in great numbers about the 18th, especially yellow hammers and robins. October 22nd. First snow fell this morning. November 30th. Extinguished the light for the season. Left the station for the winter by permission of the inspector.
Lake Superior is an inland sea. It's what made this area important for commerce. The first lighthouses that were built in the Apostles were built with the idea of guiding ships among the Apostle Islands to get to ports within this area. Then the next ring of lighthouses that were built on places like Outer Island, Devil's Island, and Sand Island were built to guide ships past the Apostle Islands. New cities have been built, Duluth, Superior, and suddenly it was not nearly so important to guide ships into Bayfield or to La Pointe, but it was much more important to guide ships from the outside world to Duluth and to Superior.
Lake Superior is a force. Lake Superior makes its own weather.
I like it when we have a storm front moving in. The big water here allows you to literally watch that wall, that storm wall, wash right towards you.
Being out in the islands is really, really interesting because there's all these stories about the lake, the power of Lake Superior, and you have to respect it. And those stories are grounded in truth and they're grounded in people having terrible experiences, drowning, shipwrecks.
The lake is the boss. The lake is the boss. Make no mistake about it. No matter how big you are or what kind of a boat you got, the lake is still the boss. Mother Nature dictates a lot of things.
Lake Superior has been known to wreck a lot of ships, and there are quite a few right in this area that are quite spectacular. The Knock Bay was a lumber schooner, and it caught fire, and they purposely tried to beach it. And where it rests there, it burned to the waterline and sank.
When you look at the shipwrecks of the Apostle Islands, you realize that the lives of the sailors are part of the price that was paid for the nation's industrial expansion. When we look at the farmers, the fishermen who scratched out a living on the islands, I think we owe it to them to preserve the memory. And you can't talk about the history of the islands without remembering the one basic fact is that this is the ancestral homeland of native peoples who consider this the center of their world.
This lake is Gichigami. Gichigami is how you say that in Ojibwe. Centuries and centuries ago, the Ojibwe people migrated here, or moved here, traveled here from out east. They knew that they were coming to this. This wasn't a surprise. This is the place where they were supposed to be going. Ojibwe people today are proud of who they are continuing with the traditions that they always have been doing in this place.
Agima mitik, that's the black ash tree. Agima makak, that's the black ash basket. I feel a great connection with these baskets. I like it that the trees grow so close to our home. When I think about these baskets, I think about my ancestors and how they lived long ago and how they used these baskets. I really enjoy doing this, and it is something that I'm able to pass on to the people over at Bad River and other communities.
With any culture group, it's very important to carry on your traditions and your culture, to know who you are.
I'm a commercial fisherman out of Bayfield, Wisconsin. I'm the fourth generation, come over from Norway in the early 1900s. Basically, I fished even when I was a young kid with my dad. Usually in the summertime, you try to get up and be on the lake before 5, and try to be back in by 2. Hopefully I'll be able to do this another 20 years or so.
This is Manitou Island. It was a bachelor's fish camp. It operated summer and winter. A lot of these men had no investment at all. This was the bottom level of commercial fishing. They sold all their fish to the fisheries, and a lot of them didn't own a boat. And if they had a boat, it was probably shared.
The Hawkinsons were 3 brothers that were born in the late 19th century. They started this fishery in about 1927. These people owned what they had. They were capitalists. They were middle-class businessmen. They owned everything, and they were trying to maximize their profits. And there were many fishermen like them, many family-owned fishing businesses along this coastline.
The things we see on the islands today are human footprints in the history of the islands. They may seem to some people like junk, but what they are really are mementos of island life. They are the tracks of time across these islands.
You know, it's something over 100 years now since my father came here, along with many other foreigners. And some of them went into the lumber camps. In a little bit less than 2 generations, all those trees were gone.
I'm kind of fascinated by these people that would actually come out onto these islands and try to farm and eke out a living out here. It must have been quite a challenge back in the early days.
We love to come here because of the unspoiled natural beauty. The beach is gorgeous. The wildlife around it is fantastic.
We've got probably the most diverse collection of sand spits in the entire Great Lakes region. They're in some of the most pristine condition. It's a really important area for migratory birds, especially Outer Island sandspit and Long Island. Gull Island is our largest colonial bird colony, and what's real striking there is you've got a 3-acre island that has 1,000 colonial bird nests.
For me, it's a little bit more about the water than it is about the islands. It's just that the islands create safe havens, and you can't paddle all the time. You gotta stop somewhere. And then it just sort of turns out that the islands are spectacular, so it's been a great relationship.
Kayaking here, you've got the islands, so you've got a constant variety, and all the islands are different. And the water is crystal clear. There's something for everybody here.
This is a sailor's paradise.
Our family passion is sailing, and so we charter a sailboat, try to check out different parts of the islands each time we're up here. I suppose as a favorite, it's going through the caves on Devil's Island. Those caves have been eroded over hundreds of thousands of years. When the wind is right and everything, you can get out there and take a dinghy and go through the caves.
I've traveled all over the world. This is one of the most beautiful spots in the world here. Time almost stands still in the Apostle Islands. It definitely slows down. You start to feel like you're living, and a day lasts a while instead of just wake up and go to bed.
This area has been attractive to tourists for quite a long time. It has been well known as a destination for people to come and to participate in outdoor activities and to experience the beauty and the natural wonders of the area. We can go back to the middle of the 19th century and read accounts of people who came to the Apostle Islands to vacation, to fish, to hunt. We certainly have records of people playing things like croquet out on the lighthouse lawns. That tradition continues today.
We've come at different seasons, and it's always beautiful. It's always interesting.
There's the mainland caves in the winter when the ice forms up enough to get out there. And get out there at sunset because it faces west, and you have these long daggers of ice coming down from the top of the caves, and you can slide back into them. It's like being in the heart of the winter.
Being up here in the wintertime is totally different. It has a beauty all its own. It's almost like looking over a desert, but it's a desert of snow. It's just so still you can actually hear the silence.
Oh, I love the peepers in spring. It's fun to follow the seasons and just notice both what you see and what you hear, the different wildlife and things coming alive, the ferns unrolling themselves. It's always amazing.
It's kind of a tropical Northwoods paradise as far as I'm concerned.
Summer is a spectacular time because you have access to the lake. You get to visit all of the different islands and lighthouses. Each one of them is unique and different, and you learn the history of them, you learn the stories of them.
I particularly enjoy the fall. The only problem with fall is it's just too short.
Unless you know the history and have seen these old photographs, you look at it and you think, they're pristine. Man has never touched here. Well, man has. And the resiliency of nature gives one hope, because we are human. We will leave footprints. We will make mistakes. We will leave scars on the land for however good our intentions. We should strive to keep our intentions good and keep those footprints to a minimum. But eventually, the lake and the wind and the rain and the snows will have their way, and the islands will continue.
To know wild places are out there, to know wild places exist, just does something for your soul. And I think it's part of the human condition.
The sound of wind when it's blowing through different types of trees. It can make music.
I want my grandchildren and their grandchildren to be able to experience all this.
It's a place that feels eminently human. It's not just a howling wilderness. You have the lighthouses, you have the farms, you have the human touches even on the islands, and yet you can walk away from those and be in the wilderness. So it's a place that's got that combination of human touches and the natural world, and it shows that the two can coexist.